Hello everyone, it's Helen at Journaling Planet. Apologies if my voice is a little bit croaky. I'm just getting over a cold. I seem to be out of the woods, so it's time to get back to my craft desk. I recently watched a video by Shannon Green, and I'll link to it below. And she reminded me, as she so often does, of a project that I'd wanted to do for ages, which was to make a complete journal from absolute junk. A true junk journal, if you like. Now, I know a lot of us work with materials that might not be considered junk in the junk journal community, and that is each creator's prerogative. This is not about bashing those people. I just wanted to take some trash and see what I could actually make just from that. I think the only thing where you might say I slightly bended the rules, and it really is only slightly, is that this image that I'm using in the cover is a photocopy of trash. It's from an old calendar, and it's a Coca-Cola calendar, and Coca-Cola is one of my favourite brands, and I just couldn't bring myself to use the original, and I haven't been able to do that with any of the images in that Coca-Cola calendar, and there are many. I could make a whole journal just with that calendar, but I have chosen so far to photocopy the images since it's just for personal use. I'm in no way, trying to profiteer from using that image. It's for my own personal journal, and I bought the calendar. Then I thought, I'll just photocopy it and I will use that in the window in the front of this journal. And because I'd photocopied it, and thus it was made of more flexible material than the original calendar, I was able to more easily create a little collage out of pieces from the image without bulking up the cover too much. And the idea was that it would just all fit in this little window. And it sort of worked, I think. Obviously, we don't get him in the image because it's just too small. But because it's a photocopy, it doesn't matter too much that some real estate is lost, because I still have the original image and I can use him in a future project. I found the most time-consuming element of this project was the drawing around each element to make sure it fit, the trimming down. I found it quite relaxing. There was no real measuring involved. It was just a matter of lining everything up on my mat with my ruler and my blade and just getting everything to the size that it needed to be to fit into this very small box. Now, this box, I'll just tell you a little bit about it for those of you who are not from the UK. It's a Tunnocks tea cake box, and they're a type of biscuit, and they've kind of got a biscuit base and they've got marshmallow on top, and then they're covered in chocolate, and they are considered quite the delicacy. Now you can see there on the box, it says Est 1890. So they've been creating these biscuits in some form or another since that date, and they have thus kept a very vintage brand. And to me, that makes perfect fodder for a journal of this nature. Something that is a kind of classic brand unto itself, I think really lends itself to junk journaling. However, I am not just going to use brands like that in the journal. I am going to make sure that I do use some more modern brands, and I'm going to do that on the basis that, on the whole, branding is designed to be attractive. At this point, I got very hung up on whether or not the picture was straight in the frame, so I take that out a couple of times. I feel like if I use branding that is modern and attractive as well, that I will create something that is a real document of the time in which we're living. And it's the kind of thing that, if in 20 years' time somebody finds it, they will think, my gosh, look at the differences in how the brands look. And look at the brands that were around then, and look at the prices and all those kind of things that we think about things that were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And Shannon Green mentions this in her video, that she sees it as a kind of document of the time. with this Coca-Cola packaging, I did consider taking the top layer off to make it a little bit less bulky, because I wanted to essentially reinforce the inside of the journal so it wasn't quite as flimsy, but the actual cardboard, the full strength cardboard, seemed a little bit overkill. So I was about to take the top layer off, and then I realized that that wasn't going to really happen. Like, if I did that, then I would probably tear the branding, and that was going to essentially ruin the effect. So I just decided in the end to go with all of the cardboard, the full bulk, and actually it was the right choice. And that was something I learned doing this. Initially in my head, I thought, well, maybe I'll debulk some of the cardboard. I won't be. I don't think I will do even in the inside the journal. I think that what I will do is I will probably keep all of the bulk, because it will just make the pages and the journal itself more sturdy. The cardboard that I've used for the cover is quite flimsy, and so it can use that reinforcement. For the pages you'll see coming up, I use some paper bags and packaging that I've essentially collected over the time that I've been meaning to make an absolute junk journal. And of course, that's not going to be the most sturdy of material either. So if you're thinking about doing this, I would recommend embracing the bulk and just going with it and accepting that it's probably going to be a bit of a chunky gaiter mouth of the book. And that's okay, that's cool, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, when reinforcing this cover, I did decide that I was going to cut the cardboard into 3 pieces. If I tried to keep it as one piece, it would have just been very difficult to fold around the spine, and I just don't think it would have worked as well. So the idea was to just cut into 3 pieces that would reinforce the 3 panels, the front, the spine, and the back cover. And then between those things later, I do add some masking tape just to reinforce the kind of gaps. But for the first step, it was just a matter of getting pieces of cardboard down over those panels to reinforce those as they stood. And one thing I will say also is that when I was working with this journal, it did help to keep reminding myself that the stakes were really low, that this is all trash, and that if I cut it wrong and made a mistake, it wasn't the end of the world. It was fine. I could get another Coca-Cola box at some point and it would be fine. I would just use that because there are plenty hanging around. They're essentially trash. They're not precious materials. I'd just like to take a moment here to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel and supported it, leaving comments, leaving likes. I really enjoy doing this, and I was never expecting to acquire as many subscribers as I have. I actually just thought that my mother might watch and that might be it. So it was really lovely to see so many new subscribers recently, and to see so many comments from people who've been subscribed to me for a long time through many, many different things that have happened to me since I started this channel. It's very difficult to explain the sense of community that I feel from that, but it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with like-minded people who enjoy this craft and to essentially geek out a little bit with people, people in everyday life who you meet, your family and your friends. They don't always understand why you would sit for a whole Saturday afternoon cutting up some Coca-Cola box. But I know you do, and I'm so, so grateful to have you around. So thank you for that. Now, this little piece of packaging that I'm cutting up now is from a stationery store in London called Choosing Keeping. And the brown paper bag with the gorgeous vintage designs on it, black and white, that is from a shop called Typo. Again, a stationery shop. The brown paper bag with the sunshine logo on it is from a local cooperative that delivers kind of milk and bread that I'm a part of, and that I try to support rather than use the supermarkets. And the one with the blue sort of cursive writing on is the brand Boots in the UK, which is a chemist. The paper with the holes in it was just some packaging that came. And of course, as soon as I saw those holes punched out of it, I knew that I would use it for a craft project at some point. I just didn't know when. And so these are all the pieces that I decided to use for my signature. When making the signature, it was really important to use the binding clips to keep it all in place so that I cut it relatively straight. It didn't have to be perfect. At the end of the day, this is trash. And the odds are that I'll be adding all kinds of things to the edges and to the pages that kind of make them uneven and maybe even a bit scrappy. So it wasn't really important to get it perfect, but I just wanted to get it as straight as I could. And when I made those lines, I knew I had to cut inside them. So that's the reason I'm not lining my ruler up, precisely on those black lines that I'm making. The other question that I have about this as I go along in the project is that for making the cover, I have used glue stick, and I think that I'll probably end up going over that with some sort of tacky glue. I think that's what I'll end up doing, just to seal down those Coca-Cola panels. I don't think that the glue stick is really going to hold because of the bulk of the cardboard. So that's another thing that I sort of learnt and sort of came to understand as I was making the project. The other thing that really, dawned on me was that I needed to be careful about how many pages I was putting in each signature. I've done these projects before where I've thought I'll have lots of pages in the signature. Not only does it take forever to fill that journal and you end up wondering if you'll ever finish the project, but it also means that essentially you end up with the most ridiculous gator mouth where it's almost impossible to even work in the journal because it's so bulky. You don't really know what to do with it. So these were all sort of lessons learned from past projects. And as I was putting this together, I just wanted to kind of share with you the things that were springing to my mind as I was making it, because I understand that some people who come to these channels are complete beginners. They have not watched as much YouTube University as I have. And my goodness, I have watched a lot of YouTube University when it comes to crafting. I have to say it is pretty much my favourite thing to watch is people doing crafting videos. And I guess that's why it was sort of inevitable at some point that I would start my own. So I'm working on the second signature here, and what's funny is that I did really and ah about whether or not to do this second signature. I wondered if by the time I'd put all this bulky packaging and cardboard into the first signature, that would actually be so full that there wouldn't really be room for a second signature, but I went with it anyway. Since I'd already sort of cut enough for 2 signatures, I decided, what the heck, let's go for it. If it ends up really, really bulky and, unmanageable, well, it is only junk at the end of the day. I haven't used expensive craft supplies and, burned through some of my most precious papers. It's just paper bag, it's packaging, it's things that I was given when I bought products and they were deemed extraneous to those products. I think the other thing that I noticed as I was making this is that I think my blade is running a little bit low on sharpness. I'm going to need a new blade in that knife, and it does affect how crisp and sharp your cutting is. So if you are struggling to cut paper and you're getting frustrated, please check the sharpness of your blade, because I know that's something that, particularly for beginners, they can get very frustrated about, wonder why nothing's cutting easily and why it's so difficult for them when they see it on tutorials and it's so easily done. And the answer might just be that your blade isn't sharp enough and that you need a new one. So right here, I'm making a pattern for punching the holes in my binding. By the way, I am the worst in the world at three hole binding. And if you want a tutorial on that in which you easily see what to do, I can recommend literally any video from Treasure Books that does a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, because I am so involved with doing it. My head's in shot. The odds of you actually seeing how to make a 3-hole pamphlet stitch in this tutorial are slim, because for some reason it is the part of the process that really takes so much of my concentration, and it's not difficult. I'm not going to suggest to any of you that doing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch is difficult. It's just that I think there are some people on YouTube who make it look wonderfully easy, and I'm just not one of those people. I always find that there are kind of niggles in getting the needle through all the pages, and then I find that there's a niggle in getting it through the other side, and I find that maybe that my thread has doubled up like it has here, and that it's too thick and I have to sort that out. But essentially it's in the middle, up to the top, up to the bottom, and then back through the middle. And again, if you are an absolute beginner, watching any video by Treasure Books where she does a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, if that is your answer. You don't need to learn this from me, because I can tell you I don't make it look as easy as I should. But also it's sort of hopefully a comfort to some of you who always find niggles with these things and it never goes as smoothly as it does for some people on tutorials. Hopefully it helps you understand that other people struggle too with even basic things, even when they've been doing it a while. And the other thing that I do when I do this, just for those of you again who are sort of new to making journals, is I train the paper. And by that, I mean I go through every single page at least once, but often twice, and I fold it over. So I turn the page so that it essentially sits neatly in the binding. Now, this isn't an essential step because you could just do it as you're filling the journal, but I like to see immediately how it's sitting in the cover. I like to see that everything is as lined up as it can be. Even with making a template for the binding here, it's a little bit off. It's by like a couple of millimeters. The signatures are at slightly different positions, just by millimeters. And because it's a trash journal, I am not going to stress over that. Because it's for me, I'm not going to stress over that. I'm making this for fun. Now here I try to round the corners and I fail miserably because, of course, I've bulked it up, haven't I? So my corner punch is like very funny. That's not going to work. And it's at this point that the Est 1890 typography on the front is annoying me because it's upside down. And I decide that I am going to cover that with a piece of the paper bag that I was using. It is a beautiful design, that paper bag, with old adverts printed on it in black ink. The shop Typo, as I mentioned earlier, a stationery store, gives you these bags when you buy from them. I decided to put some embellishments on the paper bag, and I did deliberate quite long and hard about this. I tried several different pieces of trash from the little folder that I was pulling from. It's really funny that I haven't done this project sooner, because I love branding. It's kind of very interesting to me. I guess I like the typography and I like the colours. And one of the first books, in fact, the first ever book that I got traditionally published as an author, was about what we call ghost signs in the UK. Now, these signs are all over the world, and they are essentially hand-painted, faded signs that were painted many years ago to advertise different products and brands. And what I did is I went around London in the UK and I photographed all of these signs, or many of them, I should say, because photographing them all is very difficult, but I photographed many. And I made a book of it, and I got a publisher, non-fiction publisher, interested. And it was the first book that I ever had a publisher interested in. So I go back a long way with branding. It's something that interests me, the histories of the businesses and the typography and the design. So this to me is a kind of dream project, just to be able to use trash. It is all made of trash, and the only thing that will be going into it is trash. I guess the only thing you could say that isn't is the string that I bound it with, a little bit of ink, and obviously the masking tape. But other than that, I mean, this is 100% trash, and I'm really proud of how it looks. I like the fact that there's blue on the top right-hand corner and blue on the bottom left-hand corner, and that blue and yellow are lovely contrasting colours. And so I think it works visually for that reason, because you got those contrasting colours. So ultimately, I think that's what drew me to the ink box, that I thought, oh, blue, it's a nice contrasting colour with the yellow, but it did look better in that top right-hand corner. So leafing through the signatures here, training the paper, showing you what's inside this journal, how it looks, gluing down again that piece of Coca-Cola box. I think I really am going to have to go in with some more tacky glue, and also taping down over sort of gaps between the cardboard just to make sure it's all nice and smooth, and then it's all going to hold together. That's the aim of this. So I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope you enjoyed looking at this trash journal. I just wanted to do one last little segment where you saw a real close-up of it. So what do you think of this, and has it inspired you to make your own trash journal? I would love to hear from you about that and what your own brands might be that you use. I'm just getting started, and there'll be other brands in the mix. I hope this video has been inspiring and helpful. If it has, maybe you'd give me a subscribe or a like, or maybe you'll leave me a comment. Either way, thanks for watching. There'll be another video along soon, and I'll see you next time.